Sastasha has the dubious privilege of being the very first dungeon in the game. This means that it's the very first instance of group content that people unlock, which also means that it's the player's first time getting a taste of the meat of 14's content. I'll start this breakdown with a clear statement. No matter what I say after this, and no matter this dungeon's position on the tier list, this is a great first dungeon. It does a fantastic job using sprouts into group content by giving them a gentle, beautiful dungeon without a lot of overly complex mechanics and aggressively dangerous enemies to face. It's a fantastic first experience, and while it does have some very notable flaws, I think the team did a good job on this one. That said, I'm not a newbie, and I won't be treating this dungeon with kid gloves just because it's the introductory dungeon. I will be taking that into account, but I also won't hold back. Sastasha's biggest problem is overexposure. In an MMO like 14, players spend a lot of time running content. In fact, the game has the roulette system to give incentive for players to go back and run older content. However, this is both a blessing and a curse, because with the roulette system, players run the risk of running the same thing over and over and over and over. Sastasha bears the brunt of this burden. As the first dungeon, Sastasha is always in the roulette, unless you're running with a pre-made 4-man group, which is a rare privilege that few of us have. As the player progresses, they unlock increasingly interesting and complex dungeons, but in spite of that, Sastasha is always there, crouched at the end of your bed like a sleep paralysis demon. The chances of rolling it in the roulette decrease over time, but it's never zero. And let me tell you, dear viewer, when one is at or near the level cap, wielding an entire bar of abilities, a complex rotation or extensive tools for powerful healing, and has grown used to being challenged by complicated enemies with engaging mechanics, getting shunted back into level 15 Sastasha with 4 to 5 buttons to your name is like breaking both your legs. It feels like you're hobbled, and that's not a fun feeling to have in an MMO. This problem only gets worse as the game grows. When more newbies join, more people are looking to get into the early game dungeons, which means that there's a higher chance that players will get shunted into the dank depths of Sastasha. With the absolute glut of new people joining into 14 every day, Sastasha is being run now more than ever. To give you my personal perspective, I've run this dungeon more times than I think I've experienced human touch. I know the layout by memory, the individual monsters in the trash packs, the exact pathing to avoid some pools, even the flavor text said by certain NPCs that you walk by in the captain's quarters in the makeshift bar that the pirates set up. This dungeon is burned into my skull so deep that I can feel the layout of its map when I scratch my head. The annoyingness of this dungeon is directly tied to this overexposure. I mean no hyperbole when I say if I ever have to run Sastasha again, it will be too soon. I've seen enough of it for a dozen lifetimes. Now that you understand my perspective on this dungeon, let's start the breakdown proper. We're gonna go about this as normal, covering the trash mobs and the bosses while adding a bit of a twist. I'm gonna be talking about how each of the areas look, as well as the theming of the dungeon as we go, instead of leaving it for the end of the video. The general gist of the dungeon is that the party is sneaking into a pirate base to drive out a dangerous crew. To get there, they must sneak through a cavern that's normally underwater. This area is absolutely beautiful. The walls are covered in bioluminescent lights, and the entire place feels like you're walking through an underwater wonderland. However, even as the water recedes, there's life that is adapted to living on the land. As such, the cave is also full of dangerous marine wildlife. There's a few things to talk about when it comes to the ads here. First off, after the first group, send someone, preferably a DPS, to go check the note that's in the cave directly ahead while the rest of the party continues on to the right. The note will mention a misspelled color, either blue, red, or green. Make sure you throw whatever it is in the chat before you go meet back with the party. There's also these fucking clams that you'll have to deal with. These things are really weird in that they can only be damaged while their mouths are open. They'll also spawn these will-o'-the-wisp ads that die in an instant, so just AoE those down and make sure you time your damage for when the clams are silently screaming about being stuck in Sastasha forever. The dev team never uses this mechanic again, for good reason. It's just kind of a weird one-off thing for this dungeon. At the end of this area, there will be 3 big coral pieces. Make sure you interact with the one that's the same color as the misspelled color on the note at the beginning. This will reveal a hidden switch to the back door of the pirate base. Before you can go in, you have to fight a One Piece character. He just occasionally uses a point-blank AoE that gives paralysis if you get hit by it. Try to stun it if you have that option, and if not, just move out. It's not that complicated. After you put the rumble on Chopper, you immediately go into a fucking boring underground area that's just a tunnel with some stuff scattered around, which is a massive step down from the previous area. Not to mention that the next boss is in there, but it's just the pirate captain, and I use the term boss lightly here. He and his 2 buddies do pretty much nothing, so just burn them down until the captain decides to run away. Follow him into the pretty cool looking pirate base, complete with a makeshift tavern. You'll get a key when you kill the guard with the dog on the far side of the area. Use it to go into the captain's room, where you'll get a key to a door that's got 2 female guards in front of it. Proceed through there, and you'll have a rematch with the captain. Let me take a second to say that if you don't have someone in your party that's run Sastasha more times than they can remember, it'll take you a while to find the right path, so good luck. Although you've just been told how to do it, so maybe luck has nothing to do with it. Anyway, after a bit into the fight, the captain will throw open a cage and send a horde of dogs at you. They're super weak, so just kill them all and move on. The last area is really cool. This is where you get to see the cove in its full glory. The overhanging ceiling stretches out to encompass a massive cavern with a pirate ship docked at the harbor, and beyond that you can see the open ocean. The dev team hit the nail on the head in depicting a secret pirate base. As for the gameplay here, make sure you stick to the left edge of the area so you don't pull more pirates than you have to. After that, enjoy watching the captain get fucking shanked in the wonderful piratey aesthetic of the dungeon to get hijacked by fishermen at the very end. So this is where you need to make a judgment call. The final boss has a mechanic, which is unusual for the early game. There's 4 grates set up at the inner cardinal points of the area that will occasionally start bubbling. If a player walks over and interacts with the grate, it will scare away the creature trying to burst out of it. If you don't interact with it in time, an ad will spawn. Now, this seems like a fairly complex mechanic for a first time run through of this fight. However, that's where you'd be wrong. If you have even a single party member with decent gear, you can kill the boss well before his mechanic ever comes into play. So this boss is either a tense encounter where players need to remain mobile and constantly trying to outmaneuver the boss's minions, or more likely, it'll be a basic tank and spank that will provide no engagement whatsoever. The last boss is really a great example of why Sastasha is here in F tier. Beyond the sheer overexposure factor, Sastasha is another mechanical dead zone. At this point in the game, a boss's mechanic is basically just them having an AoE, which is insultingly easy for anyone that's even slightly deep into this game or MMOs in general. Later on, most trash mobs and dungeons will have more complicated AoEs than these bosses do. That's how absurdly easy this stuff is. Beyond even that, the mechanics that are there take so long to go off that many people won't even realize they can happen. I've seen Sprouts not even notice that the second captain fight has dogs spawn. That's how fast they die. While the presentation is some of the best we'll be seeing this tier, with the one exception being Pharaoh Sirius, presentation is just the icing on a cake, and Sastasha is just a very small amount of cake with a huge amount of icing. The only people who like a ton of icing on their cake are children who haven't grown up enough to understand how good cake is, much like how Sprouts will likely enjoy this dungeon their first time through before they mature and realize how little substance there actually is here. Okay, that's all for Sastasha. As a quick ending note that I didn't know how to squeeze into the script, I do really like the music here. It's a cool mix of Lips's theme and Lanose's field theme. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. How many times do you think you've run Sastasha? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. We're nearing the halfway point in our F tier breakdown, and I hope that you'll stick with me through the rest by liking the video and subscribing to see more. Thanks for watching, and as always, remember to forge ahead. Hey all, end of video brother here to give a quick news update. This is gonna date the video terribly, but Endwalker comes out in just 2 days, and I'm going to be streaming my whole playthrough of the MSQ live on Twitch. I'll also be throwing up recordings of the playthrough as well as my reactions to key moments here on YouTube, so I'll finally be able to get some of those sweet reaction views. Come watch live at the link below, or check out the reactions here in the coming weeks. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next week after we've all experienced some major emotional trauma at the hands of Yoshi P. See you then!